A new lawsuit is challenging doctors' authority to prescribe the abortion pill via telemedicine or through the mail for patients in states with strict abortion bans. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is suing a New York doctor for allegedly prescribing abortion-inducing drugs to a woman in Texas. Let's bring in former litigator and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Okay, so what's going on here, and what is this pushing the envelope on, and what's the legislation or the ultimate agreement that lawmakers need to come up with to fix this problem?
Well, I think, Mika, let's start with how did we get here? So the lawsuit in question here was brought by Texas, not only after a Texas woman got an abortion pill from a New York physician and self-induced an abortion using that medication, but then had complications. And the way that this manifests in a lawsuit with Ken Paxton is because the boyfriend or partner of this woman did not know that she had taken abortion medication. She did not tell her partner, and only after he had to take her to the doctor for follow-up care did he learn it. Based on the language of the complaint, I think it's probably safe to assume that he is sort of the informant here and the person who went to Ken Paxton's office to enable this test litigation to take place. It is a dangerous place to think about American women being not only in a situation where they lack access to abortion medication that is legalized by the FDA, but where they can literally fear enforcement mechanisms against their doctors brought in part by the people in their lives who should be closest to them and most empathetic to them.
Well, and Claire McCaskill, jump in. Telemedicine is a pretty normal thing, right? And did this doctor in New York break the law?
Well, Ken Paxton is not as interested in that, Mika, as he is in getting a headline. And what he's really doing here, and this is what's happened, you know, in Texas, they have tried to say that some of the women who have bled out in parking lots and bathrooms, that these procedures could have occurred under the law. It was the doctor's fault for not doing them. Well, but this is what he's doing. He's trying to scare everyone in America from providing basic care to women. This is a scare lawsuit. This is to put every lawyer who advises doctors in a telemedicine world that they are in danger. I doubt this lawsuit will be successful ultimately, especially if it goes all the way up. Lisa may disagree with me on that, but really the damage that is being done here is the narrative he's building, that you can't even go online and get legal, safe health care when you want to make a decision about your body.
Lisa, maybe I'm in fantasy land here, but 35 or so days left of the Biden administration. What could they do with executive orders to at least tie this up in the courts and have women just at least have a grace period of health care?
It's an interesting question, Elise, that you asked there, because really what we're facing here is a clash between states' laws, right? There are states like Texas that not only forbid abortion, but they forbid doctors in other states who are not licensed to practice in Texas from basically directing their medical services into Texas through telemedicine. They also forbid abortion-inducing medication. At the same time, you've got 18 states like New York that have these so-called shield laws that protect in-state providers who provide telemedicine abortion services from being prosecuted or even investigated, even receiving subpoenas, for example, from these states like Texas. What Biden could do, I suppose, is to say that states like New York that have shield laws, that those shield laws are consistent with the FDA's allowing mifepristone to be prescribed and that they are entitled to do so. But could that executive order be revoked in a hot second? Absolutely. And I think one of the failures, if you can call it that, of the Department of Justice under Biden is a failure to litigate this question of, if the FDA authorizes a drug to be prescribed, shouldn't that mean that that drug is legal across all 50 states and territories of the United States? And they didn't do that. Instead, we got caught up in a battle about mifepristone that ended in just the Supreme Court saying, well, the people who brought this lawsuit don't have standing. And so we're sort of still back at square one about the legality of mifepristone, but also whether states can regulate who's entitled to take a federally approved drug for abortion purposes.
What a mess. And what is going to happen to this woman?
Well, I think the woman at this point is healthy, at least, again, drawing some assumptions, Mika, from the language of the complaint. It seems like this woman has survived and that she did have an abortion. Is she being prosecuted or investigated? No. But will she be perhaps an unwitting participant in this lawsuit if it comes to that? Very likely.
MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, I have a feeling we're going to be having a lot of conversations about this in the weeks and months to come. Thank you very much.
Sadly, so do I. Thank you.
Yeah.